What's up, Hokie Nation, and welcome into another edition of Talking with Teel, presented by State Farm. The coaching carousel continues to spin around college football. Virginia Tech men's basketball, their season is almost here, and much more coming up on this edition of Talking with Teel, which starts right now. And we're recording on Wednesday, October 15th, 2025 from the Tech Solutions Studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Carter Hill. To my left is our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. Across the way is our managing editor, Mr. David Cunningham. Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing behind the scenes. And as always, we welcome in the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel. How are you? Good to see you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome back to the studio. We were in Charlotte last week. That podcast got a lot of attention. We are going to focus on a lot of different things this week, and I want to start with number one. James Franklin is out of Penn State. In your opinion, David Teel, is he a fit for Virginia Tech, and is he realistic for Virginia Tech to be the next head coach?
Let's attack number two first. Whether he's a realistic target for Virginia Tech depends on James Franklin. Does he want to work immediately, jump back in? Andy and I can get into this a little bit later. He and I have both been fired recently, and when that happens, are you ready to immediately jump to the next job? Maybe not so much. I was a little hesitant, and I think Andy wanted to take at least a little bit of a breather before pondering his next move. So I don't know what James Franklin is thinking. Should Virginia Tech already have at least reached out to his representatives? 100% they should have. Guys, how many major New Year's Six bowls has Virginia Tech won in its history? 3, right? 2 sugars and an orange.
Right.
James Franklin has won 5. Hell yes, Virginia Tech to James Franklin. Are you kidding me? He's won 2 Fiestas, an orange, a rose, and a cotton. He needs a sugar. So maybe he can come to Virginia Tech and complete the clean sweep, which, by the way, only Joe Paterno has done. It reminds me a little bit of when Virginia Tech hired Buzz Williams, because Buzz Williams had won more NCAA tournament games at Marquette than Virginia Tech had won in its history. That's the kind of hire that James Franklin would be for Virginia Tech football.
Yeah, I see all the talk and the chatter online. It's like, oh, you definitely don't want James Franklin. I'm like, what are you talking about? The guy has a really good track record of success. I think Virginia Tech would be delighted to have a coach of that caliber here. I think you're right. It comes down to, what does he want to do? Does he want to coach right away? I don't know what your buyout was during your firing there. I know mine wasn't quite $50 million, whatever it was. I think if I had $50 million in the bank there, and then whatever he's made in his life, I might go, you know what, I'll take a step back and maybe take a breather here. If he's available in the next coaching cycle, he'll be a top candidate in that coaching cycle too. It's not like he has to rush into this thing. So I think everybody's in the immediate aftermath is asking, like, is Franklin, is he a candidate? Is he a candidate? It's like, is the ink dry on the paper, the pink slip that he got served? I can't imagine that he knows exactly what he wants to do at this point. So maybe a little premature to be talking about him as like a viable candidate. It's like, are they talking to him yet? It's like, maybe, but it's very fresh. So I think that's going to take some time. I think the more interesting thing with the Penn State situation is all of a sudden now there's a job that's a higher tier than Virginia Tech out there. All the previous openings, I think you could have looked at them and you go, Virginia Tech's as good or better than any of those other openings. Now Penn State's out there, and that's a blue blood job. Teel, what does that do to the job market? How does that affect the Hokie search?
Well, Andy, think about this, how dull the carousel last season was.
It was a dud.
For the Power Four. I wrote it down. Here were the Power Four openings last offseason: Purdue, West Virginia, Central Florida, North Carolina, Wake Forest. If that was basketball, we'd be on to something.
And North Carolina
Well,
still screwed up the hire.
Exactly. This year, we already have Stanford, UCLA, Arkansas, Virginia Tech, OK State, and now Penn State. And we're going to get almost certainly Florida, maybe your alma mater, maybe Auburn, maybe Kentucky, maybe NC State. And oh, by the way, Penn State could cause some dominoes. You know, if Matt Rule or if Matt Campbell, you just don't know how it's all going to play out. So it affects Virginia Tech in that it's going to be a more crowded market, but you know, I think Penn State is going to be fishing in a little bit of a different pond than Virginia Tech.
Do you feel like Virginia Tech is well positioned in, like, of the openings that are right now? Do you feel like Virginia Tech is positioned pretty well towards the top? I mean, obviously Penn State's in a kind of a different, like you said, a different pond, but it seems like of all the other jobs, Virginia Tech is kind of right there with Oklahoma State, Arkansas. Those, I guess, just a matter of if a Florida opens, that job kind of probably leapfrogs Virginia Tech a little bit.
Oh, no, it leapfrogs Virginia Tech a lot. And might even leapfrog Penn State. And again, David, you know, it all depends on what a coach wants in a job. You know, what type of town do he and his family want to live in? And, you know, Stanford just got a $50 million gift earmarked for football. And there may be coaches out there that find the farm, as that campus is called, appealing, and that academic bent that the Cardinal have, and maybe working with Andrew Luck as the general manager. But Virginia Tech obviously has the impending cash infusion that the board has approved, and what the athletic department leadership looks like still remains to be seen. Does that give some people pause? I do hearken back to when James Madison hired Bob Chesney. Bob Chesney didn't know who his athletic director was going to be. Jeff Bourne hired him, but Jeff Bourne hadn't already announced his impending retirement. Matt Rohn hadn't been hired. And oh, by the way, James Madison was in the midst of a presidential transition, and they still made a hell of a hire in Chesney. So even with the uncertainty at Virginia Tech, it doesn't preclude finding the right fit.
You mentioned all the jobs that are either A, open, or B, might come open. Wisconsin and Florida probably headline that group as to what jobs could come open. What are the chances that Florida State comes open? I think Mike Norvell's buyout is $61 million, which is insanity. But what are the actual chances they fire Mike Norvell?
Carter, the Florida State Board of Trustees, you mentioned insanity. If you ever watched some of their meetings during the ACC legal back and forth, I mean, you talk about performative theater and people who have lost their minds. If Penn State can go from being ahead of Oregon in overtime 3 weeks ago to then have fired James Franklin, hell, I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State fired Mike Norvell. Would I do it? Probably not. But that young man better win some football games in a hurry. I mean, presumably the Seminoles will get at least a little bit right this weekend against Stanford. But you know, they've got some other games that will not be quite as easy.
Teel, what's Florida State's record since suing the ACC again in football?
Well, the record against the ACC since the suit is 1-10, and karma is a you know what, and it is bitten Florida State in the backside. And as David Hale tweeted, since Florida State's last ACC victory, which was last year at home against Cal in an absolute taffy pull, and in a game I don't think either team scored more than 14 points. 46 teams have more wins against the ACC than Florida State does since that victory. I mean, they've lost 8 consecutive ACC games. Bobby Bowden went 8 years losing 8 ACC. I mean, it's remarkable how things have changed in Tallahassee.
You certainly hate to see it. I'm sure that there's no schadenfreude from everybody else in the ACC about this whole situation.
Well, it's the same thing in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Chapel Hill, I mean, do you think, and we'll just go to that entire state, I mean, NC State, Dave Doran has been there a while, has never really elevated that program beyond, the 8-9 win mark there. North Carolina has been an absolute dumpster fire this year. Do you feel like either or both of those jobs come open?
Belichick came out this week and insisted that he's there beyond this season. I take that with a boulder of salt.
It's always a great sign when you have to come out like on a Wednesday of the middle of the season and be like, I'm committed to this school. It's like, well, that's not going to raise any questions.
And he had to come out in his presser this weekend, and you're right. It was last Wednesday at like 9:30 at night. They're putting out statements from Belichick and AD Bubba Cunningham. Yeah, things are a mess when you're compelled to do that. I wouldn't even hazard a guess as to what might happen in Chapel Hill. But as we have said on here before, Virginia Tech just cannot repeat the mistakes of Carolina, where the board just completely, and really just a couple members of the board, hijacked the process and just went behind everyone's back and got this deal done. It would be an abject disaster, and has been. Dave Doran feels, Andy, almost like a very amicable divorce could be in the works. What's it been, 13 years?
Something like
that.
Yeah, I mean, Doran's a smart guy. He gets frustrated with the fan base and vice versa. And he knows that 13 years is a long time in this world, even more so now in the college football universe. And then, there could be more in the ACC. Manny Diaz is a former Penn State defensive coordinator, and it's well thought of up there. Could he be in line at Penn State? Could Fran Brown, who recruits the Northeast in the DMV, that's his wheelhouse, would Penn State take a flyer on him? Heck, I heard, it was one of the podcasts, Andy Staples. He even threw out Brent Key as a possibility at Penn State. And you look at Brent Key and the toughness that his teams display, and that kind of screams Penn State. Now, do I think Brent Key is going to walk away from his alma mater? Probably not, especially if they make the CFP. But let's put it this way. I think there will be more openings in the ACC than the two we see right now.
You mentioned Manny Diaz. I'm curious. He's a guy who has done pretty well at Miami, now doing very well at Duke. It seems like the Blue Devils have supported that program pretty well. But he is a guy, I think, with his defensive background would fit pretty well at Virginia Tech. How do you feel? Do you feel like he's a compatible fit for the Hokies? And would that be somebody, if you're the search committee, you're looking at reaching out to?
Sure, I'd vet him. You're right, David, he's a heck of a defensive coach. And he is getting support from Duke. Witness the Darian Mensah acquisition. There were a whole lot of people who wanted that young man out of Tulane after last season. And Duke Georgia Tech Saturday is a fascinating game. You know, the winner, especially if it's Georgia Tech, I think has the inside track to Charlotte and the title game opposite, presumably Miami. Duke's schedule isn't nearly as manageable moving forward as Georgia Tech's, but that's a really curious game. I believe, and check me guys, Duke is favored on Saturday against Georgia Tech, and I'd be interested in how you all pick that game.
Let's see. ChatGPT is a good friend sometimes.
We got.
Sure.
It looked like Georgia Tech opened as a favorite, but now Duke is favored by 1.5. So I don't know if that open is necessarily accurate on here. 1.5 Duke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Manny Diaz. I like his fit at Virginia Tech. I really do.
ESPN says Duke -1.5.
Right.
So, yeah.
It'd be tough to top Brent Pry in terms of head coaching hair, but Manny Diaz would do it. As somebody whose hairline is not as robust as it once was, I'm a little jealous of the hairlines of some of these guys. So Manny Diaz, though, that thing is like gelled up and ready to go there.
Just seems like he's like a good.
And I'll tell you who else is gelled up and ready to go, Andy, whose hair you would be jealous. And it's a guy we've talked about before, and I'm going to go cover him this weekend. And that's Bob Chesney.
Ooh, Bob Chesney does have great hair.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. Guys, the more I look into him, last season JMU essentially won with offense, and they brought darn near everyone back. I figured, and a lot of folks did, even the coaching staff there did, figured they were going to be a real problem for folks on offense this season. Hasn't really quite worked out that way, but they have really buttoned it up defensively. They are top 10 in the nation, total defense, scoring defense, opponents' yards per play. Not one opponent, not Louisville, none of its 6 opponents have gained more than 300 yards against James Madison this season. I mean, Louisville got darn near 400 at Pittsburgh and only managed 2 and change against JMU. That tells me that's a coach who can win with offense. He's a coach who can win with defense. That, to me, is very impressive.
The funny part to me about Penn State is if Brent Pry had the year Virginia Tech he was supposed to have last year, his name is probably at the top of the list at Penn State.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
I don't know about the top.
Not
Or-
top of the list.
Towards the top.
It's
He would be considered, I
it's
should
on
say.
the list.
Considered, I should say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe.
Maybe? Reach?
Maybe. I think it'd be a reach.
Okay. All right. That's why
All
we
due
podcast.
respect to that military bowl victory that he had, but assuming that they did well last year, that really would have been 1 year of experience like that. I mean,
Sure,
Penn
sure.
State can pull, short of like taking Alabama's coach or Ohio State's coach or something like that. Is there a coach in the country that wouldn't be at least consider
Yeah.
Penn State? I mean, I feel like you even look at LSU's situation like right now, like Brian Kelly. Hey, maybe that's a nice little exit strategy there. I mean, they're 5-1, so I don't know why he would want to leave LSU. But I mean, they're talking about like Marcus Freeman even looking at that. It's like he's the coach at Notre Dame. Like, I mean, that's the kind of pull that Penn State has. So I think they could do better than. I don't feel like they're like we have to stay in the family. We're Penn State. That's how we do this thing. So I think they go out there and they find whoever the best football coach is that they can get, and they pay him a boatload of money, and that's what they're going to do this time too. I think.
Another name that
Another thought on
ahead,
the
I'm
James
sorry.
Franklin. Another thought on the James Franklin angle, guys. What do you think Brent Pry might tell James Franklin about the working conditions at Virginia Tech?
It's a good point.
I don't know.
is that where the new budget comes into play, though? He's playing in a different
he could.
sandbox than Brent Pry.
He would be financially, but what would Brent Pry tell James Franklin about the rest of the operation?
That's a good point. We'll get to that in a minute. there is another name that has been brought up actually on Twitter and on message boards recently that is interesting to me.
Very reliable sources.
Yes,
Twitter and
yes.
message
Oh, yeah.
But I
I was
do,
gonna say.
yes, but
Those
I
have
do
been
want to.
vetted clearly.
Yes, yes, yes. Does Mark Stoops at Kentucky make any sense to you at Virginia Tech?
Carter, it's funny. I got a text yesterday from somebody who's pretty wired in that area of the world and said, I'm hearing this. And I'm like, really? And yes, Mark Stoops, I guess the only two 10-win seasons, I don't have his record in front of me, but the only two 10-win seasons perhaps in Kentucky history are on his watch. But man, it's been bad recently. And do you really want to jump on a coach that an SEC school, by all accounts, is getting ready to send packing? I don't know. It feels, I think you can do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
A coach in SEC school sent packing. That's Dan Mullen, right? I mean, I know he's at a new school now and is winning,
Yeah.
but this is the reality when you're hiring a new coach. Is like if you're in a position like Virginia Tech, it's like you're not pulling the sitting coach of Alabama or the sitting coach of Tennessee right now. There's going to be some warts on some of these candidates, whether it's not enough success at their current big school stop, or it kind of is flatlined a little bit in some situations, or have been out of the game a little bit in some of these candidates' cases, or don't have the experience in the Power Four. I feel like every candidate is going to be like that. There's not going to be a perfect candidate in this whole list, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think everybody will probably have warts somewhere. Teel, I'm curious, as far as this relates back to Virginia Tech, we haven't gotten any clarity from Virginia Tech recently. With Babcock, when we spoke last week in Charlotte, it was, it seems like with Babcock it got pushed, and we're gonna speak to him. With Babcock's not speaking. The committee signed NDAs, according to what Andy got the other day. Just the whole.
Well, we all got the email.
Yes.
Yeah, we got the email from Brian Cox, and they keep moving the goalposts, guys. First, it was, we're postponing the interview because President Sands is going to give the search committee its marching orders, and we want to wait until that happens before Witt talks to you guys. Okay, fair enough. Not that Witt should be the spokesman. Maybe some folks above him might want to answer some questions, but I guess that's below them. And then this week it was, the search committee has signed non-disclosures. Well, you knew that. Witt told Bill Roth that. We've known about the non-disclosures. This is not breaking news. All of a sudden, it's an issue for him to discuss what his future might be, about the Board of Visitors' approval of the money. Are those tangentially related to the search? Yes, but we're not asking him about candidates. He's not going to spill that. And by the way, about these NDAs, what is the punitive side of this? Somebody leaks. What's Virginia Tech going to do about it? I signed an NDA, but yet I still told Pete Thamel, please. This is...
Especially if it's like Jay Pearson. Like how much has this guy donated to the university over the years? And like, we're really going to come down on you hard here. It's like, are you really? Come on now.
What, you're not going to cash his check?
I think, NDAs in, like university searches, I don't think it's actually unusual. When you have committees like this, university kind of searches like this. Extending this to say that now Witt can't talk about the structure of the athletic department going forward, or continuing the messaging about this $230 million cash infusion to the athletic department. It feels like it's been incomplete, the messaging on that. And when you don't go out there and do your own messaging, other people will do it for you, and they will say what they're going to say about that. And that might not necessarily be correct, which is why it would be wise to put somebody in front of the media to talk about some of this stuff. And there's still a lot of unanswered questions about this whole thing. And I agree with Teel. I don't think it necessarily should be Witt. If he has to go out there and talk to us and answer questions about his future, well, he's not the one making that call about his future. There are other people above him making that call. So whether it's a spokesperson for the president or the board, or whether it's somebody on the board itself, if it's Rakovich talking, I just feel like they need to put somebody out there to at least give the impression that there's somebody in charge of this whole thing.
Andy, it's no mistake or no accident that meeting to approve the financing plan was A, virtual, B, did not include public comment, which precluded media questions. If the meeting had been in person, we all would have been there. They all, maybe they would have just blown past us in the aftermath. But we could have made it a lot more uncomfortable for them. As it was just like, whatever, we don't have to answer to anybody. And I'm sorry, you're a public institution and you have a lot of fans and donors out there asking questions. Now, maybe through back channels, you are answering those questions. I would certainly hope so. But your point, Andy, is quite well taken. The public messaging about the financing plan, that could be a positive for Virginia Tech. That could be a message to agents and prospective coaches. I don't understand why they're not out there banging the drum on this.
Yeah, if they had the BOV meeting in person, we could have released the Berman on them. And then all bets are off at that point. It's like, you don't know what you've opened up here. This is a can you can't close at this point.
David, does it feel as like I'm just obviously we cover Virginia Tech on a daily basis, so I think we have a interesting perspective on it. But I'm just wondering, like, from an outsider's perspective, like somebody who maybe covers Penn State, does this situation at Virginia Tech seem as dysfunctional on the outside, do you think, as it truly is?
100% it does. Yes. I mean, the fact that your AD is not on the search committee, and then all of a sudden he's being told, no, you can't talk to the media. And when he appeared the one time before reporters to discuss Brent Pry's dismissal, he literally read from a statement and left the room. Now, I don't believe that was his choice, but that's what he did. And please, just release the statement then. Why did you even put him up there?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
My whole thought on this is, like, as bad as it might look, just hire the right coach.
Yeah, and then it doesn't matter.
It'll all be forgotten.
Remember what a joke Tennessee was there for that one coaching search where it says, this guy, no, Schiano, no, we don't like Schiano. We're going to protest
Was that the Jeremy
this whole
Pruitt
thing.
one? They hired Jeremy Pruitt?
No, that's when they hired Heupel, I thought, wasn't it? That was after they got rid
Maybe.
of Pruitt. Am I confusing those two? I mean, you looked at that and you're like, Tennessee's not going to put it together forever. Then a couple of years later, Hendon Hooker falls in their lap, and all of a sudden they got a great coach. Great coach, great performance from a quarterback, and they're back in the top 10. So, I mean, it can turn quickly if you make the right hire and get the right coach. So it might look like this from the outside, but I feel like if the committee does its job and gets a good coach in there, that it solves a lot of problems.
Andy, nobody cares how the sausage gets made as long as its sausage tastes good. And that's what we're going to find out with Virginia Tech if they hit this out of the park. Now, if their next coach is another dud, man, there are going to be a lot of questions and a lot of complaints about the process itself.
Yeah. Hire the right coach, and we'll just be laughing about this in 2-3 years. Well, maybe. Still is a confusing process. But if you hire the right coach, I think you're going to be good to go. So with that, let's step aside and hear from one of our sponsors, State Farm, here on Talking with Teel. Go with a good neighbor. The State Farm mission is to help people manage the risks of everyday life, recover from the unexpected, and realize their dreams. 5 different State Farm agents are sponsoring Tech Sideline, providing coverage over 6 contentious states. State Farm, proud sponsor of Tech Sideline. And welcome back to this edition of Talking with Teel. Hey, before we move on when it comes to candidates and this process, you guys posed the question during the break that I want to pose the question that I want to pose to all three of you. We'll go roundtable with it. Would it be prudent, and this would only concern a certain amount of candidates, but would it be prudent for Virginia Tech to go ahead and hire a football coach right now with somebody maybe out of the game? And there are good candidates out there.
You coming to me first?
We'll go with you, David. We'll go with you.
Okay, sure. I think it's a fascinating question, Carr, and one I've pondered for a while, because I think there would be four, now that James Franklin is out, there would be four primary people. It would be him, it would be Pat Fitzgerald, it would be Jimbo Fisher, and Dave Clawson, all of whom come with extraordinary assets, and as David Cunningham mentioned earlier, there are warts on everyone's resume. No one is perfect. What I wish I knew the agent world better. What I don't know is whether agents would discourage Virginia Tech from doing something like to say, wait a minute, I also represent, because they're all represented by this handful of high-powered guys. And, I represent this guy, and if you sit tight, you can probably get him. So I don't know what Virginia Tech might hear from the agent world, but the potential dividends on this, the ability to come in and recruit the locker room and start to work the donor base. And the upside to me would be very considerable.
Yeah, I wonder about that. Now they have this new rule with when's the new transfer portal window? It's not till January now, right?
And it's, I think, a 2-week thing.
In the past, I think this would have been a lot more helpful because you get the transfer portal right there in like early December. Correct? That's what it was before. Mm-hmm. So if you have a coach in there, they got to evaluate the stuff right away. They have to understand the roster immediately. If you get somebody in now that's the normal time frame, post Thanksgiving or early December, sometime like that, they still have like a month until the transfer portal technically opens. I think that gives you some time to take stock of the roster, to watch film about that stuff. So I don't know if it's necessarily as advantageous now as it used to be to get somebody in place so quickly like that. I think the other part of it is, you would be restricted to hire one of those handful of guys that are not on the market right now. So you're not hiring somebody who's sort of on an upward trajectory. It'd be James Franklin just fired. Dave Clawson sat out the season. Pat Fitzgerald has sat out a couple seasons after, an ugly exit from Northwestern. Jimbo Fisher, currently on the ACC network staff there. If that's the hire you want to make, I think it would make sense. But, man, you're limiting yourself from some of these up-and-comers, John Sumrall, Alex Golish, some of these guys that have done very well that are, looked upon a lot better now than they were at the start of the season. I just think it might be the right hire, but it's not necessarily one that I think would excite the fan base necessarily. And I know you got to make the right hire. Exciting the fan base is a secondary thing here. You want to get the right hire in place and get that person. I like Teel mentioned before, I think you kind of limit your candidate pool if you're going through this process.
Yeah, I think
you do, Andy, and I also wonder about, and you guys follow recruiting more than I, but what is the state of Virginia Tech's high school class for 2026, and would having a coach in place be beneficial in that regard?
Yeah, I think, it's not a great class to begin with. It's small. It doesn't have a lot of blue chippers on it. I'm looking at it right now. It's currently ranked 106th nationally. Yeah. And that's got 8 hard commits, and one of them is a kicker. Now, he's a good kicker. Don't get me wrong there, but it is a kicker. So you're talking about 7 position players in this whole thing. And of those 7, I wonder how firmly committed they are right now. So I think whoever comes in and is hired is really going to have to have their work cut out for them from a high school recruiting perspective. But that's the name of the game now. Is like, yeah, high school recruiting is somewhat important, but to get immediate dividends, to get this team up to snuff, to be able to compete in the ACC network, or the ACC next year, you're going to have to get a bunch of transfers. You're going to have to hit on that transfer class to make them competitive immediately.
I think of those four, I mean, Franklin would be the only one where you potentially bring players from a previous school,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think if the committee, if you sat there and said one of those guys is who we want, 100%, that's our coach, yeah, I think it makes sense. But otherwise, I think you're just boxing yourself into a corner, and I think there could be advantages, like David Teel said, of recruiting your roster, but at the same time, and maybe advantages of there are going to be so many openings on the market that you're getting ahead of everybody else, and you think, okay, well, we're getting a steal here, and we don't have to compete with everybody else for a John Summerall, who's of course going to be probably highly coveted. But at the same time, if you're not 100% sold on somebody, I would say you're probably better just to figure it out in the midst of while everybody else is doing it, because then you're just boxing yourself into a corner.
And the committee is
It
not
would
this
have to
far
be a
along.
heck of a
No.
job.
Like everybody's like, oh, Franklin gets fired. They sign these NDAs. This is connect. It's like one has nothing to do with the other. They are not that far. I mean, this, from what we understand, they're very initial stages of still just like collecting names and getting sort of a general sense of what people think about the candidates at large. So they're not narrowing in on a hire right now. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah, if it's not the right
and
fit,
guys-
I wouldn't go after it. Continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, the hiring a football coach is so much different right now, even than when Brent Pry was hired. You have to find someone who is comfortable in chaos, and the rules are uncertain, and the rosters flip every year, and it requires a totally different skill set than the job did even 3 or 4 years ago. And you need to be comfortable that the person that you are investing in, literally, and the staff they can bring is really, really adept at working in those conditions. And I think that's difficult to ascertain. And I think it's very challenging for any search group, be it at Virginia Tech or Penn State or Stanford or Arkansas, any of the open. It's going to be really, really difficult to identify that person who you think can best navigate this environment.
Do you guys want to play a quick game of buy or sell?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to give you 4 candidates. Buy or sell, one of them is going to be the next head football coach at Virginia Tech, based on your personal opinion. Dan Mullen, John Summerall, Ryan Silverfield, and Manny Diaz. Andy, we'll start with you.
So do I think it's going to be one of those 4?
Correct.
I mean, just playing the percentages, I would sell.
Okay.
Just because there's so many candidates out there that I don't know if any of these 4 would be the top ones on there. No, I'm not saying that they wouldn't be good hires if they were made. I think Summerall will have options. Silverfield, I know people will say he's different from Fuente, but it's just, the idea of hiring another Memphis head coach to me just seems bizarre. I know a different staff, different person, different time. It just would feel very bizarre to me to do that. Mullen, I saw this week, he said, I'm going to be here next year. That doesn't mean anything.
No.
These coaches
Nick
will
Saban
say
said he wasn't taking the
whatever
Alabama job.
whatever they want to say about that thing. We'll see if he looks for something next year. I think Diaz would be a very good hire. I think he's a good coach. I think he got a bum rap at Miami. I think he's done well at Duke. But I will sell if you're telling me it's going to be one of those 4 right now, just because I'm playing the percentages
Okay.
on this.
Go ahead, David. Then we'll get a Teal.
Yeah, I would probably do the same. I mean, there's so many coaches out there, but I think all 4 of those guys would be good fits. Silverfield's probably the one I would be most bullish on, but Summerall's great, and I encourage anybody who did not to go read Chris Coleman's profile of him the other day. I like Manny Diaz. I think Mullen is interesting, and he's doing pretty well at UNLV right now. I just find Carter. We're so so early along in the process.
I know, but content, I know.
It's just like it's one of those things where it's like the search committee has been put together for 2 weeks now, and it's like they have no idea who in the world's going to be on their final list yet. Let alone it's hard to say, oh yeah, I'm going to buy that Dan Mullen's going to be the next Virginia Tech head coach, because he's going to be one of X number of candidates at the end. So
Okay. Last but not least.
Come on, David. You don't think that there are some members of that committee with those big opinions and perhaps big egos don't have an idea of who they want to see on that finalist list?
Oh, I have an idea. I know that they have an idea of who they want to see. That doesn't mean that they'll be there.
Yes, they do. Yeah. No, I am hard selling.
Okay.
That force. I don't think Manny Diaz is going to leave Duke. Absent a Penn State offer, he'd be. I think he would take that, but I don't think he's leaving Duke for Virginia Tech. I think Sumrall's going to the SEC. I don't know quite enough about Ryan Silverfield. I know David just said he's very bullish on him, and I mean I would love it if Mullen and Anthony Calandria came to Blacksburg as a package deal just for, again, content, and see Calandria compete against Virginia in Lane Stadium next season. But no, I think it'll be somebody else.
Anthony Calandria and Alex Orji, who might be out of eligibility, but they're both at UNLV. That would be full circle at
Quite the
Virginia
quarterback
Tech.
room.
Teal, there's one other name here, and I think we are legally obligated to bring it up in every podcast here. He is currently 3-3 at his stop, and the schedule is not very forgiving coming up here. He plays the number 14, 6, 5, and 4 teams in the country the next 4 weeks. I'm, of course, talking about Shane Beamer. I think before the season, you and I, or when Pry got fired, I think you and I both were sort of the same mindset. Like, he's there. He's at South Carolina. That's his thing. He wants to make it his thing. Could things change if they miss a bowl game this year, and all of a sudden the South Carolina people are like, do we want you as the head coach down here? Are we entering that territory at all, or is this premature to think about that?
Any things can always change. Ask James Franklin. But that to me, number one, it's a fascinating question. Number two, it all depends on how South Carolina plays this. If there is a disappointing season ahead for the Gamecocks, how difficult or uncomfortable do they make Shane Beamer? And by they, I mean not only his bosses, but the donors and the fans. Are they supportive? If not, then sure, things could change. And then, wow, wouldn't have thought it in preseason, but.
I mean, he's
let's look
making
at this.
$8.5 million a year. That's the
He
thing.
is. Let's look at it. Will Muschamp in 2019, his last season there, went 4-8. They did not get rid of him after that year. They went into 2020. He started 2-5. They fired him at that point. So I don't know if that's gives you an idea of what Gamecocks fans or the donors would think down there. I feel like the game has changed a lot since even 2020 in terms of there's so much investment in the game now, and so much boosters are paying not just for facilities and all this other stuff and salaries. Now they're paying player salaries essentially. I mean, let's call it what it is in this whole thing. And I think this is why you're seeing this process ramped up. And James Franklin is preseason number 2 or whatever they were, and beating Oregon, and all of a sudden he's out of a job a couple weeks later. I mean, the stakes are very high, and if you're not winning, I think the money people now are like, well, what are we paying this money for?
Yeah, I will share with you guys, and Andy, you probably had a similar conversation with Shane, but when I sat with him in Columbia this summer, he could not have stressed to me more how much his family loves it there. And that is his wife and his children. And, unless folks in that community were to start making life a little unpleasant for the Beamer family, I think that would be very persuasive for Shane.
Yeah, you have to think of how old his kids are right now, and I want to say among the oldest, she's probably in high school right now. That's not a time you want to
Yes.
up and move your entire family in this whole thing. So I think if he's comfortable there, and they will have him, that he's not going anywhere. Would be my thought.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, like with all due respect to South Carolina, trust me, I have a lot of respect for that program. What is South Carolina football supposed to be? You know what I'm saying? Like, how many 10-win seasons has South Carolina had?
I think it's 2. I think they're both
Two?
under Spurrier.
Okay.
It might be more.
Have
than
they
that,
ever won
but
the SEC? They played for one SEC title. I think that was in 2010.
It was 2010 because I was there.
Oh, okay.
And it was a bloodbath in the second half.
Was it against Auburn?
Cam Newton
Cam
just
Newton.
ran them over. I mean,
Oh.
listen, anybody was going to get crushed in that game, but Auburn sort of threw like a pseudo Hail Mary right before halftime. And then the second half, it was something like 30-0 in the second half. But that was an absolute freight train of an Auburn team. So I think everybody was going to lose to them.
And their fan base is awesome. It's just they're a little bit like the NC State equivalent in the SEC to me in terms of on-field results. Like, what is NC State football supposed to be? NC State's never won the ACC. They've never even played for an ACC title.
Never won an Atlantic Division.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
To correct myself here, 4 10-win seasons for
4
South
10-win
Carolina.
seasons, okay.
3 of them under Spurrier from 2011 to 2013.
Yeah, there you go. Men's basketball, 3 weeks away. Virginia Tech is picked to finish 12th in the ACC, Teel. What are your thoughts on that? And where did you pick the Hokies in the preseason poll?
Funny you should ask, because it was, Carter, when the poll came out yesterday, I just started writing down, okay, how did it compare to my ballot? And no team was I further off on than the Hokies. I picked Virginia Tech to finish 7th. They were picked 12th. I picked Clemson to finish 12th. The Tigers were picked 7th. So there was the flip. I had the same top 5 as everyone as a consensus in a slightly different order. I had the same middle 7 as everyone in a different order, in the same bottom 6, just in slightly different order. So not a lot of surprise, but the biggest to me was Virginia Tech.
I for the record, I had the Hokies 8th. And
Okay.
I think, and I was I texted with 1 or 2 other voters, and they said they had Tech around 6th, 7th, 8th too. So I think there are a couple people that feel good about Tech, but I think the overall consensus from the league is people are like, what's Mike Young doing? People don't really know. And people are a little bit bullish on them.
Well, I mean, you look at how they've done the last couple of years. That's
Yeah.
how
And
these
that's
polls
fair, that's
work.
fair.
It's always based on what have you done in the last couple
Yes.
seasons, and they've been nothing special. I mean, you guys have been around Mike Young. You know how excited he is about this team. Like, he feels like,
Oh my
all right,
gosh.
we're back in business here. Like, it's time to compete in the ACC. I feel like if you're other beat writers out there, you don't really see that. And I would like to note that the ACC media is not exactly done great
No.
on picking winners on the football side of things. That maybe basketball's a little bit easier, smaller rosters and such. But the football picks the last couple of years have not looked so hot. So I wouldn't take this preseason poll and be like, well, what was the thing TL Al Groh always used to say? Pickers pick, coaches coach, players play. That was his quote
great
every
line.
time we'd ask him. When I covered UVA, asking him about the preseason pick. He's like, well, pickers pick, coaches coach, players play. And he's got a good point. I'll hand it to Al on that one.
Yeah, and let me read you something. I saved it on my phone, and I was surprised that Abdallas didn't get much love on the preseason all-conference teams. And I was asking Will Wade, who I've known for a while from his time at VCU, don't know him well, but I asked him about the influx of internationals in the conference. And here was his direct quote: "The schools you know, Virginia's got some really good ones. Virginia Tech's got a great one.
Will Wade keeps it real, too. I mean, he flat out told the media
does.
that he interviewed at NC State before they even played Clemson in the NCAA tournament.
Oh, yeah, Will Wade's not BSing anybody.
Yeah.
He's a fun guy. Speaking of Will Wade, David, I think I picked NC State third. And I think between NC State and Virginia, who I picked fourth, I mean, you got two really good coaches coming into the league, two really good rosters. Darian Williams highlighting the Texas Tech roster, a lot of international flavor on UVA, and then Malik Thomas, I believe, from San Francisco. Mm-hmm. What do you make of Wade and Ryan Odom and the rosters they've assembled? And man, it seems like both of those squads are like they could go deep in the postseason this year.
I picked them 3-4. Yeah, I just had them flipped from you, David. I picked Virginia 3 and NC State 4 behind Duke and Louisville. Maybe undervalued Carolina at 5th. Some people would say I did. But I think Ryan Odom and Will Wade are better coaches than Hubert Davis.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And that's why I voted them where they are. I have more confidence in them getting the best out of their rosters than I do with Coach Davis. And that's acknowledging that he excused Mike Krzyzewski from his final home game at Cameron and beat him in the Final Four and reached a national championship game and was probably an Armando Bacot sprained ankle away from winning the whole damn thing. But I think Virginia and NC State are going to be very good this season. And oh, by the way, they play each other twice. I think that was, we regret that NC State and Carolina won't play twice this season, but if you were going to pair up, two other teams to play a couple times this season, State and UVA was a pretty good choice.
David, where are you heading this weekend? What's on the docket game-wise? What game are you covering this weekend? I should ask you that every single week.
I'm going to Harrisonburg.
ODU JMU.
ODU JMU.
Yeah. And it's homecoming, so I may take a lap or two around the parking lot and see who I bump into.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's going to be a good game. Old Dominion's top 15, top 20 in offense. We already talked about JMU defensively. JMU is the first team in Sun Belt Conference history to start 4 consecutive seasons 5-1 or better. I think that's pretty remarkable for a program that just elevated to FBS. Now, I don't think the Sun Belt champion is going to be much of a factor when it comes to the highest ranked G5 and the college football playoff. But I think if James Madison wins Saturday, they got a better than decent chance of hosting the conference championship game that first Saturday in December, because the Sun Belt plays at the team with the best record, much like Conference USA does, and that's why you saw Liberty host Diego Pavia in New Mexico State a couple seasons ago in the CUSA title game.
JMU's a fun team to watch too.
I watched their Louisville game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a heck of a goal line stand last week. And guys, if you will indulge me, please, a shameless plug, but it's a plug of a story that involves Virginia Tech, and I hope folks will read, and it's going to post here in the next couple days. It'll be in our Sunday print product. But Mike Young, Ryan Odom, and Mike Rhodes, the head coach at Penn State, have come together, and they are rallying behind a friend of theirs who has worked with all three of them. This gentleman's name is Alex Peavy, and he was on Mike Young's original staff at Wofford College, and he was later the head coach at the collegiate school in Richmond, where one of his players was Russell Wilson. And he then was the de facto sports psychologist for Mike Rhodes and Ryan Odom at VCU. And Alex is 47 years old. Andy, he's your age. And that guy has been battling multiple forms of cancer for 8 years. When he was first diagnosed, he was told he might not last the week. It's a remarkable story. He has 2 middle school aged children, and he is devoted to meditation and mindfulness, and he's a man of strong faith convictions. And I just found him remarkable. Talked to him for more than an hour, and Coach Odom and Coach Young were so gracious to give me some time to talk about him and all that he means to them. And they're rallying to his side because, frankly, the medical bills are mounting. And I hope folks will read it. It's a story of hope and faith and love, and it was a privilege to write. So thanks for letting me tout it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll
Yeah.
definitely be reading. Definitely
Absolutely.
be reading. David, really appreciate you hopping on as always. Always a fun time. We look forward to next week, and enjoy your weekend at JMU.
Thanks, guys.
For the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel, for David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill saying so long from this edition of Talking with Teel, presented by State Farm. We'll talk to you very soon.